of a monolithic piece of software into more of a composable set of microservices. And by breaking apart our offering into these sub-services, this is what allows us to take advantage of the elasticity of something like Amazon Web Services, where, again, if a certain aspect of your hub gets very busy, we can dynamically provision up and provision down that aspect of a hub as it occurs. So some have asked, in particular, thank you, Drew, is OneSciencePlace a replacement for HUBzero? Are you getting away from HUBzero? What exactly are you doing? And apologies for us not clearing up that ambiguity when we first brought this out, but if I was to project out something on the order of 2 years from now, what we hope happens is that a lot of the types of things we do on HUBzero get migrated into this new microservice architecture, and ultimately we would be at a position to retire the monolithic code base for HUBzero and replace that code base with OneSciencePlace. So again, at some time in the future, what you should see, and I apologize we don't have a firm schedule for this, but is that we'll have an open source release of OneSciencePlace and a final open source release of HUBzero, as well as cross-compatibility between the two architectures. So you'll be able to take something that was running on a HUBzero architecture and put it into a OneSciencePlace architecture. Whether you were to choose to join our pooled set of OneSciencePlace communities would be more up to you and a discussion with Rick Mauser, but it's a possibility to do that, but it will also ultimately be a possibility to run this software stack yourselves, just as you do now with HUBzero. Again, our motivation for doing this is primarily to take advantage of these more modern architectures. It's wonderful that we've had the span of life that we've had at HUBzero and all the great projects you all have given us, but one of the consequences of having kind of a longer lifespan is that you need to replace and update your infrastructure as the infrastructures that support it and on which it runs also evolve. So this is a very timely thing for us, and I think we're getting to a point now where the cloud trade-offs are making more and more sense price-wise in comparison to what they might have done 5 years ago. Another thing that OneSciencePlace is doing for us is changing the way we do development to some degree here at HUBzero. We've traditionally had longer-term projects defined and delivery schedules for longer-term projects, and we're going to continue to do that for many of the large projects that we do, but we're also trying to break many of the things that we do into sprints. And we actually have done, I would say, unofficial versions of this maybe for a little while. Our first official one was actually the launching of OneSciencePlace in December. And we're going to continue to try to either migrate services from the existing HUBzero framework or add new services to OneSciencePlace in this sprint mode. And as we learn to do that well, we hope that we can engage some of the community to be part of those sprints, either in discussion of defining them or maybe in some cases participating and certainly listening to the report outs. So we're kind of excited about adopting this mode of working, and it's fitting with a microservice architecture like this, where everything doesn't necessarily have a big consequence on everything else, and it's more easy to update compartmentalized pieces of the code than it is to update a very large piece of code where sometimes the cross compatibilities can be somewhat of an issue. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens during this upcoming year as we work through this. And one of the things that we're also trying to do with OneSciencePlace, which may be carried back for a while into the existing HUBzero release, is shifting an emphasis from creating a lot of our own capabilities to adopting and integrating with other capabilities. So examples of that include a much more friendly integration with things like Dropbox. We're currently defining a sprint to try to develop the best integration we can with Slack, so that as you create community workspaces or things like projects, if you're familiar with using those in the Hub, you'll be able to provision and deprovision those services associated with any of those user groups that you have. So, for example, from one of these shared workspaces, you might on the fly create a Dropbox folder that is instantly shared with that entire group, as opposed to trying to manage all this stuff in multiple separate services. And we'll see as the year goes on which services allow us to have the best access to APIs that allow us to do that, and with which ones that we also need to make compromises. But it really is an emphasis of trying to bring together many of the tools people love to use already in one roof, rather than sometimes us creating analogs of those services that may not always provide the capabilities that originally made people love them. And then that allows us to focus more of our development time on some of the more interesting things that we in this industry of science gateways are facing, which is things like having the best interface for working with tools like Jupyter, and looking at how do we take a model which has traditionally been about supporting simulation tools and migrate that into what do people want to do today in terms of gateways with data science, for example, embedding machine learning tools, and a variety of things like these that we will likely be soliciting your feedback on as we start this process of running these sprints during the first part of the year and taking care of a backlog of things we know need to be done, and then starting to look outward and speculatively creating some of the tools that you think would serve our community in the biggest way. So yes, OneSciencePlace is a new product. No, HUBzero is not going away at an as yet not firm date in the future, but we're not talking about 6 months and we're not talking about 5 years. There will be a migration, and an architecture for you will still be available, and it will be better, funner to develop with, and hopefully continue to evolve again as 5 years from now another hardware infrastructure or something comes into place that everybody wants to take advantage of. So I hope that clears everything up, and happy to have a discussion with anybody about that individually, or if there are questions about it, I can try to answer those now, or if we don't have answers, that's a thing that the development team and the rest of us here will discuss and see what we come up with. I don't know, Claire, is the protocol now to ask questions, or do we go through the entire agenda first?
We can stop for questions. How's this for vocals? Is that better?
It's quiet, but it's clear.
Okay, so that's good. Don't want any radio background noise anymore, so that's awesome. We can stop for questions if folks are willing to spend some time on this, since it is a relatively new engagement that we're doing. I think it would be worthwhile to stop now, but always welcome to just move through the rest of the agenda before we stop for questions.
I don't have any questions, Mike. I just wanted to say thanks. That was really helpful.
Oh, no problem, Drew. You really brought it home to us that we didn't do the best job we should have explaining all this stuff, so thanks for that.
You bet. Thank you.
All right, so with that, let's go ahead and keep moving forward. And if you do have any questions for Mike, you're welcome to drop an email to myself or him, and also we can save some time for questions towards the end. But thank you very much, Mike. All right, so on to the topic that I know most of us have been waiting for, as my slides continue to move forward. There we go. Gloriously, we see our 2019 roadmap. So this is something that I know a lot of you have expressed interest in seeing ahead of time. So what we're doing now is just showing what is in the pipeline. Our goal is at the next meeting to share some more information around these items with some harder dates as well to when you can expect that. But let's start off with tools, one of the key functions of the HUBzero platform. So right now we're looking at Tools 2.0, so a simpler pipeline. What does that mean? Right now there's a lot of steps that you have to complete, a lot of back and forth between a tool developer and an admin in order to actually get a tool published. We would like to cut that down. We would like to spend less time going back and forth and more just allowing the tool developer to move forward with getting their tool published, but still continuing that level of having the tool be curated in a way that makes sense. So that's something that's currently in the pipeline. As Mike mentioned, some more integrations with Jupyter. We're looking at the next version of Jupyter, so Jupyter Hub as an integration to start working on, and this would be something we would push out for all of our hosted hubs, and then with the addition of other groups as well in the future. We also are looking at the subversion to Git for tools, making that process a bit simpler. Experiment with MATLAB web-based integration. This is something that Mike actually shared with us, that MATLAB reached out with their web-based integration and offered a pilot test for a class of 30 students or more. They're going to try to see if the platform works well with this integration, but we want to run a little bit of research through this before we actually jump on. So we don't necessarily have 30 students, so we know that you guys have plenty of students to engage, and so we welcome this as an opportunity for you to engage with us. You're welcome if you're interested or if you'd like to learn more to message us, and we'll move forward with getting all of that set up as need be. We also are looking at Docker container technology and getting away from OpenBSD. So this is something that we've been working on heavily for OneSciencePlace, so we're hoping to roll that over to HUBzero. And I should note, especially with the roadmap, everything that's listed here is specifically aligned with HUBzero. We also have some items that we would like to continue working on for OneSciencePlace, but right now the priority of this meeting is just HUBzero development items. So with that, going into our publications, we do have some opportunities here to actually do some overhaul and management. We've been talking to you guys for a while that merging resources into publications for hosted hubs, purely a data move, not a feature change, is something that's been on our pipeline, on our game plan for a while. So hopefully 2019 is the year to do this for all of our hosted hubs. We can also make this a simpler migration. This would be more scheduling with hub owners and getting admins to work on making sure that the flow goes well. But this is a conversation that you'll likely have with your Science Gateway manager in the near future, but wanted to share that ahead of time. We're also looking at a UI UX overhaul for publication workflow. As you saw with tools, we're looking at a lot of integration, and we're also looking at simpler pipelines. This is also true for publications. It does take quite a bit of time to parse through each step when actually publishing a publication. So the goal is to shorten that time, have a single web page to actually interact with in order to publish that data quickly and easily, and lower the barrier to actually get science published to the world. We also are going to look at adding in the tool pipeline, so tools can be published through publications, which would be a big factor in merging resources into publications. So that's our overall goals for publications and tools. We also have for the general CMS.
Hey Claire?
Yeah.
Can I interrupt? I think we have a question in the chat from Fred.
Yeah, of course.
And I apologize, I didn't see when it was asked, so I'm not sure if there was a specific part that this pertained to, but it says, how much of the back-end computational infrastructure has been designed? Do you want to elaborate, Fred, on specifically, is it Jupiter you're talking about? Is it something in general, or what?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind sharing a bit more information there, Fred, you're welcome to unmute yourself or add more details in the chat.
It says he's in a noisy environment. If you can elaborate a little bit in the chat, we'll pause again and we'll try to. Okay, here we go.
Posted that during the open OneSciencePlace.
We work in genomics, so Galaxy Project is a big computational framework. Okay. Well, I guess I'd say we're patterning after the use cases that we already have. So a lot of the computational work is going to be based on what many people in NowHub are doing. Some of what, for example, folks like Drew are doing on their site. Some of the other work that we've done has been in support of more web-based frameworks that call computation. So in Joe Yun's social media macroscope, for example, Smile Tool is much more of that framework. I'm not familiar with the specific compute loads that okay, I'm sorry, I'm reading the chat while I'm talking, that you're looking for. We don't have any direct integrations with Galaxy as you're referring to here, but it may be that that's something that we should talk with you in more detail about in terms of whether it's the sort of the ad hoc assembly of workflows that's interesting about Galaxy, or the adoption of the CWL, or maybe what specifically it is that you think we ought to look at. But I'm sure we'd be interested in setting up a more detailed discussion about that if you'd be willing. Okay, great, thanks. So Claire, if you would take a note to follow up with Fred following this, and if we have substantial progress on that, that's something we can also report on through email, but also during the next quarterly meeting.
Yeah, and we're very happy, especially, thank you again, Fred. Any questions or concerns you might have, we're always happy to have additional dialogue following these meetings, just because we know everyone has a unique use case, a unique audience that you are catering to, so we're always happy to see where a great fit can be with the HUBzero platform.
Yeah, and we are looking at other frameworks as we work through this process too. So
Right.
Something I didn't say, but I'll say now, is that both the folks from Indiana University as well as the Texas Advanced Computing Center are here at Purdue today, and we're having kind of about a 20-person session on what opportunities do we have for the various compute frameworks that we service to be interoperable. And this is part of a pilot process where we're going to be engaging not just the three of us, but probably 5 to 10 other computational providers out there, including Galaxy, to try to look at more of this interoperability issue as we go forward. It's something that NSF specifically has asked us to look at under the guise of our participation in the Science Gateway Community Institute. So it's very much on the forward of our minds, not so much as maybe in the past where we've been very inwardly focused, but we're pretty thankful that NSF has provided the opportunity for us to work with some of these different frameworks that we wouldn't normally have had the opportunity to do.
All right. Well, thank you very much again, Fred. Happy to always clarify. And yes, we always are looking for additional opportunities. And if you even have suggestions, if it's something that we haven't mentioned or talked about before, throw us an email and we're happy to chat more about whatever ideas you have. So running through the rest of the roadmap, we have some general CMS updates that we're going to be performing, looking at 2.3 release as a tentative target for the summer of 2019. We're also looking for, as Mike has mentioned, a series of integrations most desired by the community. So precisely what we're talking about here is just anything that might be worthwhile to integrate into the platform that is a tool that most folks use in their research lives or in their project lives while working on a hub or while working in general. We're currently looking at those as some things are investigated. We have found that there's just different requirements for each item, so the integration might be unique, but it's something that we're still willing to spend time on and try to deliver for our community members so you can get the best engagement out of the platform as possible. And I know that there's additional roadmap items. My link is sadly missing from my slide, but it is in a commonly found place, help.hubzero.org/documentation. You'll find on our 2.2 at this moment, or I'm sorry, not 2.2. You'll find in the documentation component that there's an area where it says roadmap, and that's where it has a lot of our PHP information for specific things that we're going to be changing code-wise and a little bit more detail there. So thank you, Sean, for throwing that in the chat box, and I will update my slides so it does have that link in the slide deck and post that to everyone so that you can have it after the meeting as well.
And I will, this is Sean, I'll just note that the information that's in the slides will be adding to that roadmap probably in a bit more detail in the next few days to a couple weeks and so on. And as we come up with things, we try to keep that roadmap somewhat up to date, so it never hurts to periodically check it.
All right. Thank you. So with that, if we don't have any questions regarding our roadmap, I will jump into our last two items of the day. Going once, going twice. Sold to the community space in future meetings. So everyone loves at the beginning of a new year to talk about what the future will, entail for us all. So what I wanted to focus on specifically for today is looking for a space for our members to hold discussions, to communicate, collaborate outside of what we expect right now. So right now our opportunities have been community meetings as a way to share ideas, conferences like Gateways where you can meet up and have a nice little birds of a feather or engagement on a panel to meet each other, talk about your projects, what's going on, what's new, what's different, and also through email. So it's been fairly limited. One of the ideas that we've had, and this has been tested out with another engagement we do with HUBzero, of having a space to share tribal knowledge from the community. And we've also received requests in the past of, I'd really like to just be able to reach out to this other hub that I've been able to talk to or hear about in the past, like Callies Care, for example. I'm interested in what they're doing with the Remedy Project, or I'd like to learn more about what's happening with this intercultural learning hub that has started up within this past year. How can I get a hold of that person? So instead of always going through people like myself and asking for contact information, we would like to have a space for you all to be a part of that group and just be able to interconnect as you see fit. So this is more of an open dialogue discussion. I have some questions for you all to think about, and you're welcome to answer or share ideas in chat or unmute yourself. But is this something that you guys are truly interested in? And what would be the goal of having this space? So those are my two posing questions. I anticipate your eager responses, hopefully. If this is something truly that the community isn't necessarily concerned about, we can definitely revisit this in the future. Or if you're shy at the moment. Oh, we got Fred. Thank you, Fred. Love a way to communicate. Seems like we've been having trouble hitting critical mass. Icebreakers needed. Ooh, that's a good one. So needing a place, this is Jack Smith, needing a place to ask questions short of submitting a ticket. That is true, yep. Being able to ask your community questions versus always queuing the HUBzero ticketing system. I know that can always be a good one. This is Joe. Maybe as things change with the platform, there might be a lot of confusion, and then might be good to have some place like this. Very fair point. Yeah, I think what our idea too, and thank you, Lee, for seconding that. With this community, it would exist outside of the HUBzero platform and outside of OneSciencePlace for at least as it sits in this point of time. But so far, I've heard 4 good messages of thumbs up, seems like something to pursue. And the next point would be what space would we decide to call home if this is still a sound idea that folks are interested in pursuing. And that's something that I'll bring up. We have right now a Slack channel for the HUBzero Foundation members. And this has been something that has been used before by the Foundation members to share ideas, share conversations, and also ask those questions without always relying on a new ticket to the HUBzero team. So my next step would be to see if those foundation members offline would be willing to share their space, because that's part of the package deal, to have that access to the Slack channel as a part of the foundation. And if that seems like a viable option, then I will get back with you guys, and hopefully we can open it up for more people to join and be able to, as Anne is saying now, get knowledge from others, which is very, very awesome point. So yeah, seems like the general community is in favor. We don't have any board proceedings, so I will not document now who is actually saying second or third. But yeah, Lee just mentioned need something like Slack Exchange for HUBzero and OneSciencePlace users. Yep, I think that's developers, managers. One frustrating thing is that things aren't Google searchable. That is a good point, Fred. I'm interested to hear what else you're thinking about. Is it the documentation that you're concerned about that's not populating in Google searches, or if it's something else? Happy to chat more about that. Lee's idea. Aha. Slack Exchange. Yeah, so Slack, since it is kind of a closed framework, it wouldn't be searchable by Google. But that is an interesting point. But I'll chat with you guys offline because I don't want to derail us too much. Let's build a new Google. Oh, thank you, Joe. Oh, how ambitious of you. I'll let you lead that one. Okay, Joe.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I think Sean has maybe done a little bit of looking into whether the Stack Exchange stack itself is available, or am I imagining that, Sean?
It's been a while. I think at one point in time there is, if not itself open source, there's certainly alternative versions that are open source that are available.
And Fred just mentioned the discourse, and that's specifically one of the items that we have been looking at establishing an integration for, I believe, as well, right?
Yes.
So that may be a good solution. I think a lot of this stems from a lot of people commenting that they want to have a place to discuss things, but whenever we tried to create a synchronous place for people to discuss things, like a meeting like this, we used to have bi-weekly or something like that, a lot of the times people wouldn't show up. And so our feeling is maybe if we go at this with an asynchronous communication mechanism like Slack or Stack Exchange or Discourse or something like that, then I think maybe we have a better chance of people actually hitting discussions at the time that they need them, as opposed to trying to batch them up for some meeting they may or may not be able to attend. Jack makes a note about Ask CI. Zitner chatbot. Okay.
I like where you're going, Joe. But yeah, Ask CI. Sean, do you have any thoughts there? Or is this something that we
Jack
can...
Smith. I was involved in the launch of SCI, which started off as a Stack Exchange effort, and it took about 6 months to finally decide that it was really, really tough. And so Discourse became the fallback, and that's kind of where it is now. And I think it's actually doing better there.
That's definitely good insight. Thank you for sharing, Jack. Yeah, we'll definitely look at our options here, but yeah, I think our at least first takeaway will be looking for that community member home, hopefully again, to share tribal knowledge and ask questions to your community members. And then we can definitely spend some time and report back at the next meeting what we've come up with as far as answering the exchange route or discourse.org. So thank you again for those suggestions. On to the next topic at hand. But thank you, Jeanette. That's a good point. Yeah, Slack can be handy, but doesn't enable revisiting old conversations very well. Scroll off into history. So, right, yeah, we definitely will query, and this could be an opportunity for us to just test it out. Slack doesn't have to be the go-to, but we'll spend some time doing our research to see if it is a viable fit, and then we can move forward with what works for everyone in the future, in a sense. That is true. Could be something that we add to the documentation component. So this might be something, support ticket database can be queried, metadata. That's something we've talked about, Fred, and I think that's something that we can definitely revisit and follow up with you guys on. So I'll make a note to touch base with you guys so that we can continue this good idea thread.
We specifically don't make our support ticket database searchable because there are times when people post things like their password and stuff into comments and tickets, and we don't want that to show up. So we'd have to be able to selectively decide on certain tickets if that should be a public ticket or not, which is an idea we've had in the past. So just a FYI.
Yeah, definitely a good point to make, Sean. Right, yeah, it would be comforting to know if other people are encountering some similar problems, so just knowing there is a ticket, right? And I know I'll share a little bit more information about what we considered here. So right now, each hub, especially our open source and our hosted hubs, and Foundation as well, all have their own unique support tables, if you will, or databases where all of the support tickets there live and exist. So for Foundation, right, you guys have access as well to the HUBzero, help.hubzero.org help center, and also with open source. So those are ways that common questions can be integrated since you guys are manually submitting them. We've looked at if there was a way to tie in tickets that are coming from our hosted hubs, but again, as Sean mentioned, then you start kind of having to curate each ticket that's going to be publicly available so that you're not pulling in tickets that are just users of that community requesting access to a specific document or having something specific to the content being asked about. But this is definitely an item that I can see is like hot and one that you guys want to kind of flesh out a bit more. So we'll spend some time internally talking about that, bringing it up, and thinking through some viable options. So hopefully at the next community meeting, this is my hook, right? This will get you guys to come back. I'll have some more conversational items like this to talk about so that we can start going through these ideas and seeing what we can actually implement to solve the needs of everyone. And again, share information like this in a more public setting, so that you guys aren't always asking us for information, which isn't a bad thing, but we want to lower that barrier so that you guys can get to work without always depending on a HUBzero team member. So very, very good conversation overall. Really appreciate it. Which leads me into my final item, my last agenda item for today, the future of the HUBzero community meetings. So what do they look like and what is the goal? Again, this is an open discussion, something we can continue having through chat, or if you'd like to unmute yourself, feel free. But right now, our community meetings seem to be more led by the HUBzero team. As you've noticed in the past year, we've set the agenda on what we've talked about. There have been moments, of course, where, there's been a great idea mentioned in our foundation Slack channel in a ticket, or it's something we've developed and we want to share with everyone. But we would like to try to see these meetings become your meetings, right? We want this to be led by our community, and really that goes back to, how you guys want to engage with each other and with us as well. So this is something to ponder, not necessarily a hard set item to define today. I don't think we'll all find the solution to this and it'll be perfect, but it's something to test out and see if it will work well. But I know for our next meeting, we would like to have at least some answers to the questions that were posed in today's conversation. But how is the community feeling about the overall goal of these meetings? What would you like to see more of or less of? You could even say we need a new moderator. Happy to take any advice whatsoever. I know that we're in the final few moments of our meeting, and again, I'm sorry for the slight delay and slight technical misfunction at the beginning, but I'm glad everyone was able to spend some time today discussing some great opportunities and learning more about the future of the platform. So with that, since we haven't had anything really pop up in the chat channel, we shall at least say, oh, Jack, thank you. This is a move in the right direction. Build up critical mass. Very true. Thank you, Jack. Yep. Looking at Jeanette's comment, based on the discussion roadmap developments on HUBzero is useful for starting discussion. Think the current format is reasonable. And Joe pluses that. All right. So we'll continue then, following up. Oh, Drew, you're outdoing yourself. I'm curious though, why 42? It's very specific. I like it.
The meaning of life.
Meaning of life. Oh yeah. Oh, son. Yeah, my fault. Sorry. All right. So while Joe and Drew duke it out, we'll wrap up by saying that the future of the HUBzero community meetings will be to deliver, these updates around the roadmap throughout the year, have opportunity to pose and answer any questions that you guys might have. But in the end, you should hear soon from me about potential space for us to all hold discussions, collaborate, and ask questions. You'll see an update to that roadmap with more information to come at our next meeting. And we're likely looking at our next meeting to be in March, so that's something to keep in mind since the year will fly by before we know it. So with that, I will say have a pleasant afternoon, and thank you again for joining us for another very rousing conversation about the HUBzero platform and our community members. Truly appreciate everything you guys do, and really excited to see what the future has in store for us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Claire, Mike, Sean.
Bye, everyone.